Document. Part 1. The stars had always been a source of wonder for humanity. For centuries, people gazed up at the night sky, dreaming of distant worlds and civilizations far beyond their reach. But now, those dreams felt closer than ever though. Not in the way anyone expected. On television screens, computer monitors, and even smartphones, the galaxy was alive with war. It wasn't science fiction anymore. It was real. Billions of light years away, two alien empires clashed in a conflict, so massive that its effects rippled across the cosmos. The Voran Dominion, known for their sleek, silver ships and advanced energy weapons, fought fiercely against the Zakari collective, whose hulking vessels bristled with mechanical arms and glowing red cores. Both sides unleashed devastating attacks, turning entire star systems into blazing infernos. Humanity watched, mesmerized, as the battle unfolded through telescopes and high-powered satellites designed to study the universe, but never expecting to witness something like this. Daniel Carter sat in his office at NASA's headquarters, staring at a monitor filled with streams of data. He was an astrophysicist by trade, a man more comfortable with numbers and equations than crowds or cameras. Yet even he couldn't help but feel captivated by what he saw on the screen. Explosions lit up the darkness of space like fireworks. Each burst brighter than the sun. Ships darted back and forth, leaving trails of light behind them. It was beautiful and terrifying. "This is insane," Daniel muttered under his breath. His fingers tapped nervously on the desk as he scrolled through the latest observations. Something about the patterns didn't sit right with him. The movements of the fleets seemed almost choreographed, as if they followed some kind of rhythm only they understood. And then there were the strange energy spikes, bursts of radiation that didn't match anything recorded before. They weren't random. There was purpose behind them. Purpose meant intelligence. Intelligence meant communication. Across town, Laura Carter, Daniel's wife, sat in her home office typing furiously on her laptop. She was a journalist who specialized in covering scientific breakthroughs, though lately, her focus had shifted entirely to the Galactic War. Her articles were among the most widely read online, blending technical details with vivid descriptions that made readers feel like they were watching the battles themselves. Today, she was working on a piece titled "Are We Safe?" A question many people were starting to ask. Laura paused mid-sentence, leaning back in her chair. Outside her window, the city buzzed with life. Cars honked, children laughed, and pedestrians hurried along the sidewalks. None of them seemed worried about the cosmic drama playing out above their heads. To them, it was just another story, something to discuss over dinner or share on social media. But Laura knew better. She'd spent enough time researching the capabilities of these alien civilizations to understand how dangerous they could be. What if one day, they turned their attention toward Earth? She shook her head, trying to push the thought aside. No. That wouldn't happen. Humans were too small, too insignificant. Why would either side care about a tiny planet orbiting a mediocre star? Still, the idea lingered in the back of her mind, gnawing at her like a splinter she couldn't remove. Back at NASA, Daniel called Rachel Monroe into his office. Rachel was a cryptographer, one of the best in her field. She had a knack for finding patterns where others saw only chaos. When Daniel explained what he'd noticed in the data, her eyes lit up with curiosity. "You think these energy spikes are messages?" she asked, pulling up a chair beside him. "It's possible," Daniel replied, pointing to a series of graphs on the screen. "Look at the timing. They're consistent, almost rhythmic, and the frequency they're broadcasting at wavelengths we've never seen before." Rachel leaned closer, studying the graphs intently. "If it's a message, it's encrypted, but I might be able to crack it." "Good," Daniel said, nodding. "Let me know what you find." As Rachel got to work, Daniel returned to his own research. He couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming. The war between the Voran and the Zakari had gone on for centuries, according to their calculations. Why now? Why here? Was it coincidence that humanity had developed the technology to observe it just as things were reaching a critical point? Or was there something else going on? That evening, Daniel arrived home to find Laura pacing the living room. Her laptop lay open on the coffee table, surrounded by notes and printouts. She looked up when he entered, her expression tense. "I need your opinion on something," she said without preamble. "Sure," Daniel replied, setting his bag down. "What is it?" Laura gestured to the papers spread out before her. "I've been looking into the history of interstellar conflicts. Not just these two factions, the bigger picture. Every major war seems to follow a pattern. First, it starts small, then it escalates. Eventually, it spills over into neutral territories. And you think Earth could become a neutral territory?" Daniel asked, raising an eyebrow. "It's a possibility," Laura admitted. "Think about it. We're sitting here, completely exposed, with no defenses capable of stopping either side if they decided to attack. All it takes is one ship heading our way, and we're done for." Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're letting your imagination run wild again." "No, I'm not," Laura shot back. "Someone needs to start asking the hard questions. If the government isn't going to do it, then it's up to us." Her words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken fears. Daniel wanted to reassure her, to tell her everything would be fine. But deep down, he wasn't so sure. The signals he'd found earlier still bothered him. If they really were messages, who were they meant for? And why had they appeared now, of all times? Over the next few days, the world continued to watch the Galactic War unfold. News outlets provided hourly updates, while scientists debated the implications of the conflict. Some argued that humanity should stay out of it entirely, while others suggested reaching out to one side or the other. Social media exploded with theories, memes, and conspiracy claims. Everyone had an opinion, but no one had any answers. Meanwhile, Rachel made progress decrypting the mysterious signals. Late one night, she rushed into Daniel's office, her face flushed with excitement. "I did it," she announced, holding up a sheet of paper covered in scribbled notes. "It's coordinates." "What kind of coordinates?" Daniel asked, taking the paper from her. "They lead to our solar system," Rachel replied, her voice trembling slightly. "Specifically, Earth." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of the discovery settled over them like a thick fog. Earth wasn't safe. It never had been. The question now was whether anyone would believe them or listen in time. Outside, the stars twinkled innocently in the night sky. Unaware of the storm brewing below, they continued their eternal dance, oblivious to the fact that humanity's place in the universe was about to change forever. Document. Part 2. The discovery of the coordinates sent shockwaves through Daniel Carter's mind. He stared at the sheet of paper Rachel Monroe had handed him, his thoughts racing faster than he could process them. Earth. Why would alien signals point to Earth? Was it a mistake? Some cosmic coincidence? Or was humanity already caught in the crosshairs of a war they barely understood? Rachel watched him closely, her excitement giving way to concern. "What do we do now?" she asked, breaking the silence. Daniel shook his head, still trying to make sense of it all. "We need more data. This could mean anything. Maybe it's just a random transmission, or maybe it's something worse." "Worse how?" Rachel pressed, leaning forward. Her sharp eyes reflected both curiosity and fear. "If these coordinates are intentional," Daniel said slowly, choosing his words carefully, "then someone or something knows we're here. And if they know, they might not be friendly." That thought lingered between them, heavy and unsettling. Rachel glanced at the clock on the wall. It was late, but neither of them felt tired. The implications of their discovery were too big to ignore. They needed answers, and they needed them fast. Meanwhile, Laura Carter was having trouble sleeping. She tossed and turned in bed, her mind replaying everything she'd learned about the Galactic War. Earlier that day, she'd interviewed a retired astrophysicist named Dr. Alan Peterson, who had spent decades studying extraterrestrial phenomena. His words kept echoing in her head. When civilizations advance to a certain level, their conflicts become inevitable. War spreads like wildfire. It consumes everything in its path. Laura sat up suddenly, her heart pounding. What if Dr. Peterson was right? What if the war didn't stay confined to those distant stars? Humanity had always assumed they were safe, tucked away in a quiet corner of the galaxy. But what if that assumption was wrong? She reached for her phone and opened her notes app, jotting down ideas for her next article. The title came to her almost instantly. Are we prepared? She knew it would spark controversy, maybe even panic, but someone had to ask the hard questions. If the government wasn't going to prepare for the worst-case scenario, then it was up to people like her to sound the alarm. As she typed, an email notification popped up on her screen. It was from NASA press release, detailing recent observations of unusual energy spikes detected near one of the battle zones. Laura frowned. Energy spikes. That sounded familiar. She forwarded the email to Daniel, adding a quick note. This might interest you. The next morning, Daniel arrived at work early, his mind buzzing with possibilities. He met Rachel in the lab, where she was already running simulations based on the decrypted coordinates. Rows of monitors displayed complex graphs and charts, painting a picture of something neither of them fully understood yet. What did you find? Daniel asked, pulling up a chair beside her. Rachel pointed to one of the screens. I ran the coordinates through our database. They align perfectly with Earth's position in the galaxy. There's no doubt about it. They're pointing straight at us. But why? Daniel muttered, rubbing his temples. Why would aliens send messages aimed at Earth? We're not involved in their war. We're not even on their radar. Maybe we are now, Rachel suggested quietly. Think about it. Humans have been broadcasting signals into space for decades. Radio waves, television transmissions, satellite communications, it's all out there, floating around like breadcrumbs. Someone must have picked up on it. Daniel nodded slowly. It made sense, in a terrifying kind of way. Humanity had been shouting into the void for years, hoping someone would hear. Now, it seemed, someone finally had. Later that afternoon, Laura received a call from her editor. He wanted her to write a follow-up piece to her last article, focusing on the potential risks of Earth being noticed by alien civilizations. Laura hesitated before agreeing. She knew the topic was sensitive, and she didn't want to cause unnecessary panic. But deep down, she also knew it was important. People needed to wake up and realize the universe wasn't as empty as they thought. As she worked on the article, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something. She scrolled through the NASA press release again, her eyes catching on a phrase she hadn't noticed before. Unusual patterns suggest possible communication attempts. Communication attempts. That sounded eerily similar to what Daniel and Rachel were investigating. Laura grabbed her phone and dialed Daniel's number. He answered on the second ring, his voice tense. Hey, she said, skipping the pleasantries. Did you see the NASA update about the energy spikes? I saw it, Daniel replied. Why? They mentioned communication attempts, Laura said. Is that related to what you're working on? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Daniel sighed. Yeah, it's related. I can't talk about it right now, but just trust me when I say we're looking into it. Laura frowned. You're holding back, again. It's complicated, Daniel said, his tone defensive. Look, I'll explain everything later, okay? Just don't write anything drastic until we know more. Laura hung up, frustration bubbling inside her. She hated being kept in the dark, especially when it came to something this important. Still, She respected Daniel enough to hold off on publishing anything too alarming for now. Back at NASA, Daniel and Rachel continued their investigation. They pored over every scrap of data they could find, searching for any clue that might explain the strange signals. As the hours passed, they began noticing patterns within the energy spikes. Each burst lasted exactly 3.7 seconds, followed by a brief pause before the next one began. It was almost musical, like a rhythm designed to grab attention. "This isn't random," Rachel said, her voice tinged with awe. "Whoever sent these signals wants to be heard." "But by whom?" Daniel asked, staring at the screen. "Us, or someone else?" Before Rachel could answer, an alert flashed across one of the monitors. A new signal had been detected, stronger and clearer than the previous ones. Daniel leaned closer, his pulse quickening. This time, the message wasn't encrypted. It was plain, simple, and unmistakable. "Earth," Rachel whispered, reading the translation aloud. "They're calling us by name." News of the signal spread quickly through NASA. Senior officials convened an emergency meeting to discuss the implications. Some argued that the message was harmless, possibly even a greeting. Others weren't so optimistic. General Michael Hughes, a stern-faced military officer tasked with overseeing planetary defense, voiced his concerns loudly. "We can't afford to assume the best-case scenario," he said, slamming his fist on the table. "If these aliens are aware of us, we need to prepare for the possibility of contact and conflict." Daniel listened silently, his stomach churning. He wanted to believe the signal was benign, but his instincts told him otherwise. The timing was too suspicious. The Vorin and Zakari had been waging war for centuries, spreading destruction across the galaxy. If either side decided Earth could be useful, whether as a resource, a refuge, or a weapon, the consequences would be catastrophic. After the meeting, Daniel returned to his office, where Rachel was waiting for him. She looked pale, her usual confidence replaced by unease. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "I don't know," Daniel admitted. "But whatever it is, we're not ready." That evening, Laura finished her article. She titled it *Silent No More. Is Humanity Ready for Alien Contact?" and submitted it to her editor. As she clicked send, a wave of apprehension washed over her. She hoped she was wrong, that the signals meant nothing, that Earth was still safe. But deep down, she knew better. Across the world, people read her article and debated its claims. Some dismissed it as fear-mongering, while others praised her for raising valid concerns. In living rooms, classrooms, and coffee shops, conversations turned to the stars. For the first time in history, humanity began to wonder, what if we're not alone? And what if the universe isn't as peaceful as we'd hoped? Above it all, the stars continued to shine, their light carrying secrets older than time itself. Somewhere out there, forces beyond comprehension were moving, shaping destinies and deciding fates. And somewhere below, humanity stood unknowingly on the brink of a new era, one that would change everything they thought they knew about themselves and the cosmos. Document Part 3, Laura's article, *Silent No More. Is Humanity Ready for Alien Contact? Sparked a firestorm of reactions. Some readers praised her for raising awareness, while others accused her of spreading fear and paranoia. Comments sections across the internet exploded with debates, memes, and conspiracy theories. People argued over whether alien contact was imminent, whether it was dangerous, or whether it was even real. Laura refreshed her phone compulsively, watching the numbers climb as her article went viral. But not everyone was thrilled. Daniel called her later that night, his voice tense. "You shouldn't have published that," he said bluntly. "People are panicking, and you think ignoring the problem is better." Laura shot back. "Daniel, we're talking about signals pointing directly at Earth. If this isn't worth worrying about, then what is?" "It's not just about worrying," Daniel replied, lowering his voice. "It's about how we handle it. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. There are protocols, discussions happening at the highest levels, which no one knows about," Laura interrupted. "That's my point. The public deserves to know. If something happens, if aliens show up tomorrow, we can't just sit around pretending everything's fine." Daniel sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. He wanted to tell her more, to explain the weight of what he and Rachel had discovered, but he couldn't. Not yet. "Look, I get it," he said finally. "Just be careful, okay? You're stirring up a lot of trouble." Laura hung up, feeling frustrated but unsurprised. Daniel always played it safe, always followed the rules. But rules weren't going to protect Earth if the worst happened. The next morning, NASA held a press conference to address growing concerns. Senior officials stood on stage in front of a room packed with reporters, cameras flashing like strobe lights. Dr. Emily Dawson, a marine biologist who had recently joined the team to study potential biological implications of alien contact, sat nervously beside Daniel and Rachel. She wasn't used to the spotlight, but her expertise made her a key figure in the investigation. "We want to reassure the public," began Dr. Alan Peterson, the same retired astrophysicist Laura had interviewed earlier. "While these signals are unusual, there is currently no evidence to suggest an immediate threat to Earth." "But what about the coordinates?" shouted a reporter from the back of the room. "Are they really aimed at us?" Dr. Peterson hesitated, glancing at Daniel before answering. "The data suggests a correlation between the signals and Earth's position in the galaxy. However, correlation does not imply intent. These could be natural phenomena or residual effects of the Galactic War." Rachel shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She hated hearing the truth watered down like this. To her, the signals were anything but natural. They were deliberate, calculated, and far too precise to ignore. But she knew better than to speak out during the conference. For now, silence was safer. As the press conference dragged on, questions grew sharper and more pointed. Reporters pressed for details, demanding transparency. General Michael Hughes stepped forward, his imposing presence silencing the room. "The government takes any potential threat seriously," he said firmly. "We are actively monitoring the situation and preparing contingency plans. Rest assured, your safety is our top priority." His words did little to ease tensions. If anything, they fueled more speculation. Contingency plans. What exactly were they planning for? And why hadn't anyone mentioned this before? Later that day, Daniel met with Rachel and Emily in a private lab. The three of them huddled around a table covered in papers, charts, and laptops displaying streams of data. Emily looked overwhelmed, her hands trembling slightly as she flipped through a folder filled with technical jargon. "I still don't understand half of this," she admitted, her voice tinged with frustration. "I'm a biologist, not a physicist." "You're here because of the biological angle," Rachel explained patiently. "If aliens do come, we need to know how their biology might interact with ours. Are they carbon-based? Do they breathe oxygen? Could they carry diseases we've never seen before?" Emily nodded slowly, though her expression remained uneasy. "And if they're hostile?" "That's why we're working so hard to decode these signals," Daniel interjected. "If we can figure out what they're saying or what they want, we might be able to avoid conflict altogether." Rachel leaned back in her chair, her brow furrowed in thought. What if they're already here? What if the signals aren't warnings or greetings, they're instructions? "Instructions for what?" Emily asked, her eyes widening. "For where to find us," Rachel replied grimly. "Or worse, for how to attack us." The room fell silent. Outside, the hum of machinery and distant voices provided a stark contrast to the gravity of their conversation. None of them wanted to believe Rachel's theory, but none of them could dismiss it either. Meanwhile, Laura attended a town hall meeting organized by local activists calling for greater transparency from the government. The event took place in a small community center, its walls lined with posters advocating peace and unity. A crowd of concerned citizens filled the seats, their faces reflecting a mix of anger, fear, and determination. One woman stood up, clutching a microphone tightly. "We deserve answers," she exclaimed, her voice shaking. "How long have they known about these signals? Why are they keeping us in the dark?" Others chimed in, sharing their own fears and frustrations. Laura listened intently, jotting down notes for her next article. She felt a pang of guilt, knowing she had access to information most people didn't, but she also knew revealing too much could make things worse. For now, all she could do was amplify their voices and keep asking questions. After the meeting, a young man approached her. His name was Alex Mercer, a former soldier turned mechanic who had become increasingly vocal about planetary defense. He introduced himself with a firm handshake and a warm smile. "I read your article," he said. "Good work. Someone needs to keep pushing for the truth." "Thanks," Laura replied, smiling back. "It's not easy though. Every time I write something, I feel like I'm walking a tightrope." Alex nodded sympathetically. "Laura, doing the right thing. Just don't stop. We'll need people like you when the storm hits." His words stayed with her long after they parted ways. When the storm hits, it sounded ominous, but Laura couldn't deny the truth behind it. Something big was coming, whether humanity was ready or not. Back at NASA, Daniel received an urgent message from General Hughes. The military had intercepted another signal, one stronger and clearer than any they'd detected before. This time, it contained more than just coordinates. It contained images. Daniel rushed to the main lab, where Rachel and Emily were already analyzing the new data. On one of the monitors, a grainy picture flickered to life. It showed a cluster of stars, with a single planet highlighted in red. "Earth. They're targeting us," Rachel whispered, her voice barely audible. "There's no doubt anymore." Daniel stared at the screen, his mind racing. Who were these messages meant for? Were they from the Vorin, or the Zakari, or was it someone else entirely? And what did they want? Before anyone could answer, the lights in the lab flickered. An alarm blared overhead, startling them all. Someone shouted from down the hall, their voice muffled by the chaos. "A ship," the voice cried. "It's heading toward Earth." For a moment, no one moved. Then, as if pulled by an invisible force, they all ran to the nearest window. Outside, the sky shimmered with an eerie glow. In the distance, a massive object descended from orbit, its shape unfamiliar, yet undeniably alien. Earth was no longer alone. Above, the stars continued to twinkle innocently, oblivious to the turmoil unfolding below. Somewhere in the vast expanse of space, forces beyond comprehension had set their sights on humanity. Nothing would ever be the same again. Document Part 4. The object descending from orbit was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It glowed with a soft pulsating light that shifted between shades of blue and green, casting an otherworldly hue over the landscape below. Its shape was sleek and elongated, resembling a teardrop stretched to impossible proportions. As it moved closer to Earth's atmosphere, streaks of fire erupted around its edges, but the ship showed no signs of damage. Whatever material it was made of, it was far beyond human understanding. People all over the world watched in stunned silence as news networks broadcast live footage of the event. Some stood outside, craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the alien craft. Others huddled indoors, glued to their screens, unsure whether to feel awe or terror. Social media exploded with reactions, some celebrating the arrival of extraterrestrial life, others warning of impending doom. The divide in opinions was sharp and growing wider by the minute. At NASA, Daniel, Rachel, and Emily scrambled to gather more data about the ship. Sensors picked up strange energy readings emanating from it, unlike anything recorded before. The patterns were rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Rachel adjusted her glasses, trying to make sense of the numbers scrolling across her monitor. "It's communicating," she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. "Whatever this is, it's not just landing, it's reaching out." Daniel nodded grimly. "But who's it talking to? Us? Or someone else?" Before anyone could answer, General Hughes burst into the lab, his face flushed with urgency. "We've confirmed the ship is Voran," he announced. "It crashed into the Pacific Ocean near Hawaii. Local authorities are already on the scene." "Crashed," Emily repeated, her eyes widening. "Is it damaged?" "Looks that way," Hughes replied. "Our satellites showed debris scattered across a wide area. But there's something else you need to see this." He pulled up a video feed on one of the monitors. It showed emergency responders pulling wreckage from the water, including pieces of what appeared to be alien bodies. They were tall and slender, their skin shimmering faintly even in death. Their faces were elongated, with large almond-shaped eyes that seemed to stare into infinity. Around them, seawater frothed unnaturally, bubbling as if reacting to some unseen force. "They're dying," Emily whispered, clutching the edge of the table. "What happened to them?" "No idea yet," Hughes admitted. "But we're sending teams to investigate. Dr. Dawson, you'll be part of the recovery effort. We need your expertise to figure out what killed them and why." Emily hesitated, torn between excitement and dread. This was the kind of discovery scientists dreamed of, but at what cost? She glanced at Daniel and Rachel, who both looked equally uneasy. "Be careful," Daniel said quietly. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." Meanwhile, Laura followed the unfolding events from her apartment, her laptop open to multiple tabs, streaming live updates. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from colleagues and readers alike, all wanting to know her take on the situation. She ignored most of them, focusing instead on piecing together the facts. When she saw images of the Voran bodies being recovered, her stomach churned. These weren't monsters or invaders, they were beings, just like humans. Beings who had traveled unimaginable distances only to meet a tragic end. Something about the sight filled her with a deep sadness, but also resolve. If humanity was going to face the unknown, they needed to do so with compassion, not fear. She opened a blank document and began typing. Her next article would focus on the ethical implications of studying alien life. What responsibilities did humans have toward these creatures, dead or alive? How should they treat their technology and remains? The questions felt overwhelming, but Laura knew they couldn't be ignored. As she wrote, Alex Mercer called her. His voice was tense, bordering on frantic. "Have you seen the crash site?" he asked without preamble. "Yes," Laura replied. "What about it?" "There's something off," Alex said. "Look at the footage again. Pay attention to the water around the bodies. It's glowing." Laura frowned and replayed the video. Sure enough, the water surrounding the Voran corpses emitted a faint luminescence, pulsing in sync with the rhythm of the ship's energy signals. "What does it mean?" she asked. "I don't know," Alex admitted. "But I think it's important. Maybe it's connected to whatever brought them here." Laura thanked him and promised to look into it further. For now, though, she had an article to finish. She saved her draft and sent it off to her editor, hoping it would spark meaningful conversations rather than panic. Hours later, Emily found herself aboard a military transport plane heading toward Hawaii. She sat beside two other scientists, both of whom looked as nervous as she felt. Below them, the ocean stretched endlessly, its surface glittering under the sun. The crash site was marked by a cluster of boats and helicopters, their movements coordinated yet chaotic. When they arrived, Emily stepped onto the deck of a research vessel, her heart pounding. The air smelled salty and metallic, tinged with an unfamiliar odor she couldn't quite place. Around her, Divers retrieved fragments of the Voran ship and placed them carefully into containment units. Nearby, medical teams worked to preserve the alien bodies, documenting every detail. Emily approached one of the corpses, kneeling beside it cautiously. Up close, the Voran's features were even more striking. Their skin seemed translucent, revealing intricate patterns beneath the surface. Tiny veins or something like them glowed faintly, matching the rhythm of the glowing water. What caused this? She murmured aloud, examining the body closely. There were no visible wounds, no signs of trauma. Yet the creature was clearly dead, its chest motionless and cold. A nearby scientist handed her a tablet displaying preliminary scans. Their cells are breaking down, he explained. It's like they're dissolving from the inside out. Emily's mind raced. Was this natural decay, or something more sinister? And why hadn't the glowing water affected the humans working around it? As she continued her investigation, a sudden commotion drew her attention. A diver emerged from the water, shouting urgently. "There's something down there," he yelled. "Another piece of the ship, it's intact." The team sprang into action, lowering equipment to retrieve the object. When it surfaced, Emily gasped. It was a small device, roughly the size of a suitcase, covered in intricate carvings that pulsed with the same blue-green light as the ship. The glow intensified when touched, causing several technicians to recoil instinctively. "This changes everything," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of activity. Whatever this device was, it held answers in possibly dangers they couldn't yet comprehend. Back at NASA, Daniel and Rachel monitored the situation remotely, their anxiety mounting with each passing hour. Reports poured in from the crash site, detailing strange phenomena and unexplained occurrences. The glowing water, the decaying bodies. The mysterious device all pointed to one conclusion. The Voran hadn't come to Earth by choice. They were fleeing, Rachel said suddenly, breaking the silence. That's why the ship crashed. They were trying to escape something. Or someone, Daniel added darkly. The Zakari. Rachel nodded, her expression grim. If the Zakari are hunting them, then Earth isn't safe. Not anymore. Outside, the stars twinkled innocently, oblivious to the chaos unfolding below. Humanity had always assumed they were alone in the universe, protected by sheer distance and chance. Now, they faced a harsh truth. The galaxy was vast, but it was also dangerous, and Earth was no longer hidden in the shadows. Document Part 5. The discovery of the glowing device sent ripples of tension through the scientific community and beyond. At the crash site near Hawaii, Emily Dawson worked tirelessly alongside her team to study the mysterious object. It pulsed steadily, its light growing brighter whenever anyone came close. The carvings on its surface seemed to shift and change, as if alive, forming patterns that defied logic. Despite their best efforts, no one could decipher its purpose or how to deactivate it. Emily ran a series of tests, using portable scanners to analyze the energy signatures emitted by the device. "It's not like anything we've seen before," she muttered to herself, jotting down notes. "The energy output is stable, but it feels alive." One of the technicians, a young man named Ryan, leaned over her shoulder. "Do you think it's dangerous?" he asked nervously. "I don't know yet," Emily admitted, "but we can't take any chances. If it's connected to the Voran ship, there's no telling what it might do." As they worked, General Hughes arrived on the research vessel, his presence commanding immediate attention. He strode across the deck, his boots clanging against the metal floor. His sharp eyes scanned the scene, taking in every detail. "What's the status?" he demanded, stopping beside Emily. "We're still analyzing the device," Emily replied, standing up straight. "So far, it hasn't shown any signs of hostility, but it's clearly advanced technology. We need more time to understand it fully." Hughes frowned, clearly dissatisfied with her answer. Time isn't something we have, he said bluntly. Reports are coming in from around the world, people are panicking. Governments are starting to make moves. Some want to destroy the device outright. Others think we should try to communicate with it. Emily shook her head firmly. Destroying it could be catastrophic. We don't know what kind of reaction that would trigger. And communication. That's risky too. We're dealing with forces we barely understand. Hughes didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the horizon, where the sun was setting over the ocean. The sky burned with shades of orange and red, casting long shadows across the water. For a moment, he looked almost human-burdened by the weight of decisions that could shape humanity's future. Just keep me updated, he said finally, his voice softer than before. And remember, whatever happens next, we're all in this together. Meanwhile, global leaders convened for an emergency summit via video conference. Representatives from every major nation participated, their faces lined with stress and uncertainty. The meeting was chaotic, with arguments breaking out almost immediately. We need to ally ourselves with the Vorin, one delegate declared, passionately. Their technology is far superior to ours. If we side with them, we stand a better chance of survival, and risk angering the Zakari. Another countered sharply. Do you have any idea what that could mean for Earth? They'll see us as enemies. A third voice chimed in, calmer, but no less urgent. Perhaps neutrality is our best option. If we stay out of their war entirely, neither side will have reason to attack us. The debate raged on, voices overlapping in a cacophony of fear and frustration. Laura Carter watched the live stream from her apartment, her fingers flying across her keyboard as she documented the proceedings. She knew this was history in the making, a moment when humanity had to decide whether to step forward into the unknown or retreat behind walls of fear. Her phone buzzed incessantly, notifications flooding in from readers and colleagues alike. Many praised her coverage, thanking her for keeping them informed. Others criticized her tone, accusing her of bias or sensationalism. Laura ignored them all, focusing instead on capturing the essence of the summit. As the hours dragged on, a consensus began to emerge, though it was fragile at best. Several nations agreed to form a coalition, tasked with studying the Vorin wreckage and determining Earth's next steps. Others remained hesitant, insisting on maintaining strict neutrality. No formal alliance with either alien faction was announced, but the groundwork had been laid for potential cooperation, if circumstances demanded it. Back at NASA, Daniel and Rachel continued their own analysis of the situation. Using data transmitted from the crash site, they attempted to recreate the energy patterns emitted by the glowing device. Their goal was simple: to determine whether the signals matched those they'd intercepted earlier, if they pointed to something new. It's similar, Rachel said after hours of work, rubbing her temples, but not identical. There's a layer of complexity here we haven't encountered before. Daniel nodded, staring intently at the screen. Could it be some kind of distress signal? Possibly, Rachel replied thoughtfully, or maybe a warning. Either way, it's clear the Vorin were trying to send a message, whether to us or someone else. Before they could delve deeper, an alert flashed across one of the monitors. A second alien craft had entered Earth's orbit. This one belonged to the Zakari. News of the Zakari's arrival spread quickly, sparking panic worldwide. Unlike the sleek, elegant design of the Vorin ship, the Zakari vessel was massive and brutish, bristling with weapons and mechanical appendages. Its dark metallic surface absorbed light, making it appear almost invisible against the backdrop of space. As it hovered ominously above Earth, people everywhere held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. General Hughes wasted no time assembling a response team. He ordered military units to prepare for possible conflict, while simultaneously attempting to establish communication with the Zakari. To everyone's surprise, the aliens responded not with words, but with action. A beam of light shot down from the ship, striking a remote desert region miles away from any populated areas. Daniel and Rachel rushed to analyze the impact site, joining a team of scientists and soldiers already on the ground. The beam had carved a deep trench into the earth, its edges scorched black. In the center lay a single object, a crystalline sphere roughly the size of a basketball. It shimmered faintly, reflecting the sunlight in dazzling patterns. "What is it?" one of the soldiers asked, keeping his weapon trained on the sphere. "No idea," Daniel admitted, kneeling beside it cautiously. "But it's definitely not natural." Rachel pulled out a handheld scanner, running diagnostics on the sphere. Her eyes widened as the results came in. "It's transmitting," she whispered. "The same frequency as the signals we decoded. Earlier than it's meant for us," Daniel concluded grimly. "But why?" Before anyone could answer, the sphere began to hum softly, vibrating with increasing intensity. Suddenly, a holographic image materialized above it, a towering figure clad in armor made of jagged, angular plates. Its face was obscured by a mask, but its voice boomed across the landscape, amplified by an unseen mechanism. "Humans," the figure growled, its tone cold and commanding. "You harbor fugitives of a Voran dominion. Surrender them, or face annihilation." The message was clear and chilling. The Zakari weren't interested in diplomacy. They wanted revenge, and Earth was caught in the crossfire. Laura covered the events live, her heart pounding as she relayed the Zakari ultimatum to her audience. Social media erupted once again, with calls for resistance mixing with pleas for surrender. Governments scrambled to formulate a response, torn between protecting their citizens and avoiding further provocation. In private, Laura called Daniel, her voice trembling. "What do we do now?" she asked desperately. "I don't know," Daniel admitted, his tone heavy with exhaustion. "But whatever happens, we're running out of time." Above, the stars continued to shine, indifferent to the turmoil below. Humanity had always dreamed of reaching the cosmos, of finding life among the heavens. Now, they faced a stark reality. The universe was vast, beautiful and deadly, and Earth was no longer safe.